The topic or the title of my presentation, "It's Time to Stop Admiring the Problem," is inspired by a colleague of mine who's very apt at pulling us or calling us all to account whenever we're in a discussion. He brings it to a head always by asking the question, so are we going to stand around and continue to admire the problem, or are we going to get on and solve the bloody thing? And being a person who likes action and progress, it's my preference always to focus on the solving it. It holds more appeal, it's more exciting, and we've learnt it's pretty rewarding too. Clicker. Big green button. Now technology, it's beaten me. What will it take to get to $100 billion by 2030? Or perhaps the better question is, what will it take to ensure the opportunity of Asia's rising middle class isn't lost to Australian agriculture? To me, what it will take is transformational thinking and transformational investment. And I go to David Lloyd's quote here: "Don't be afraid to take a big step if one is indicated. You can't cross a chasm in two small jumps." Another quote: "The challenge isn't to see what no one else is seeing. The challenge is to think differently about what everyone else is seeing." So, inspired by Arthur, in 2012 I established goFARM, not as a farming operation per se, but as a property development company. An agricultural property development company focused on transitioning assets and natural resources to their highest and best use, and in doing so, focusing on step change productivity outcomes. goFARM's a family-owned business. It's backed by Australian family capital, and it's led by smart Aussie farm kids. Although the girl in the front row with the red hat looking cheeky is a Kiwi, but just like actors and singers, if they're any good, we'll claim them as ours. So Vanessa's one of ours. That's a subsample of our team, but it's representative of who they are. They're all very well educated, they're all very well travelled, they're all very energetic, and they're all very excited about the future of agriculture, and that's why they're involved with us. Purpose is everything, and we do what we do because we're passionate about agriculture and we believe it has an important role in Australia's future. With respect to our purpose, there's three core tenets. The first is to improve Australian agriculture. The second, unashamedly, is to create wealth for our investors. And the third is to leave a positive legacy on the assets in which we invest and the communities in which we invest also. Where's the growth going to come from? And we've listed here Australia's top agricultural commodities, and there's no surprises to anyone, I don't think, in that list. In casting our mind forward to 2030, effectively a decade, I thought it's useful context to go back a decade and think about what was happening in 2008, 2009 of significance in Australia. 08-09 was the final and most devastating phase of the millennial drought, lowest recorded inflows into the southern Murray-Darling Basin. The volume-weighted average price of water in that year was $670 a megalitre. It's creeping back towards that at present. We're at $500 across the southern connected basin. But in the interim, we've seen volume-weighted average prices as low as $20 a megalitre. 10 years ago, Penny Wong was the Labor Minister for Climate Change and Water and was making headlines in every Murray-Darling Basin community. There was rapid change in water policy, there was significant government participation in water markets, there was lots of uncertainty, lots of fear, lots of distress, and often a lot of anger too. One article in early 2010, titled "Pennies from Heaven," announced the $303 million sale of water rights from Twynham Pastoral, the Calbetza family's agribusiness, through to the federal government. I recall the backlash. ABC Radio that morning and at lunchtime were effectively calling the end to the township of Hay. It was last one out, turn off the lights. We wind forward 10 years. We've now got 3 cotton gins in the Murrumbidgee Valley, a 4th one under construction. There's been more dirt moved. A friend of mine did an analysis recently. He thinks there's nearly $1 billion has gone into the Murrumbidgee Valley between Naranda and Balranald in the last 5 years alone. So someone up there has put up a solar farm and turned the lights back on in the Murrumbidgee Valley. A lot can change in 10 years. In April 2009, Timbercorp went into receivership, or into administration rather. We're all familiar with the backstory to that. And despite all the turmoil and change that resulted, the legacy of that investment's been some wonderful assets that continue to produce and lead exports into our Asian trading partners. In 2008, the Australian almond crop was a 30,000 tonne crop. This year, the industry is forecasting just north of 90,000 tonnes, and there's a lot more latent potential in that industry with immature plantings yet to come to market. 10 years ago, the blueberry industry was a $10 million industry. It's over 125 million today. I think you get the point. A lot can happen in 10 years. If I was to look forward 10 years and sort of say, what are the leaders going to look like, or where's the growth going to come from? I'm going to nominate a couple. There'll be plant-based proteins, and there'll be healthy, nutritious fruit and vegetables, notwithstanding the labour issues that's been cited by Emma. Agreed. And just because it plays a big part in my life, I'll throw in wine grapes as well and say that there's more growth and opportunity there. So how do we do it at goFARM? We have a very deliberate approach. We apply an objective approach to selecting, acquiring and developing each asset. It all starts with purpose each and every time. Then it's led by a significant body of commercial research. I'm very fortunate to have the services of Ed Perrott, who Richard Heath and Australian Farm Institute were very kind in lending to us. So acknowledge that. That research feeds into an investment strategy. The strategy informs our acquisition activity and then cascades into the transformation process. So what's that look like out in the field? And here's one example, and it's one of many, but I think the visual impact here is, I think, tells a good story. So this is a property that sits between the Murrumbidgee River and the Murray River in southwest New South Wales. It was a 5,000 acre dryland farming operation run by a father and son team. This is one of 3 farms they owned. It was effectively the home of one full-time equivalent. It was a relatively conventional mallee farming system, dominated by cereals and shears on ploughs. We acquired that with a vision to transform it. The first step was to move it from old school dryland farming to a more modern farming system. And whilst that was occurring, undertaking all the due diligence and licensing and approvals and permits required to develop an irrigated asset. That also included all the planning for orchard design, procuring genetics, and all the bits and pieces that go to baking the cake. So from early 2015 through to 2016, we had from old school farming to a more modern dryland farming technique. Then in 2017, the work started in earnest in terms of shifting dirt, laying pipes and building infrastructure. Winter 2017, the first trees were planted on that property. This is an almond orchard. And that's what the property looked like at Christmas this year. So the before and after, a snapshot. Before the transformational thinking and investment, it was a dry land cereal farm, 320mm rainfall zone. It's now an investment grade almond orchard. Historically, the revenue generated on that property was circa $1 million. Today, our target revenue is $45 million. It employed 1 full-time equivalent. It now employs 20 full-time equivalents in a township of 2,500 people. It's a significant contributor to that community. During the development phase, there were over 100 full-time equivalents involved in the construction of that project. And it's moved from being a capital investment of $2.5 to $3 million through to an $80 million project today. Obviously, that's a capital-intensive investment, and there's a lot of them. As you drive up and down the back roads of rural Australia, you see underutilised and undercapitalised assets everywhere, and there's an enormous opportunity to get involved and conduct transformational investment. But it obviously requires capital and a will to do it. goFARM, as I said, is backed by Australian capital. We've been in a very fortunate position that the two founding families have got a capacity to back the business and our projects, and along the way we've invited in other families, like-minded families that see the opportunity or have experienced the wealth creation that agriculture done well can deliver. And then beyond that, we've moved into investment partnerships with institutional capital, both Australian and foreign, and one of our key investment partners is here today, and he represents US capital, and they're also an ag family that manages institutional capital, and they're excited by the transformational opportunities that Australia offers. In the US, they do not see or recognise the opportunities for growth through capital investment that they recognise here in Australia. So I think that vindicates the opportunity that sits here for us. In each and every one of our investment opportunities, it's always been Australian family capital that's led or been the catalyst for the transformation. And so they're conversations that have started locally and grown beyond that. It's something we don't disclose often, but I'll share it here because I think it's important in terms of hopefully trying to motivate a bit of change of thinking and some action at home. So goFARM, we're a young business, we're 6 years old. We own, control or manage now north of $700 million worth of assets. So little old goFARM that didn't exist 6 years ago has now got over $700 million worth of capital that it's investing in transformation. And so I guess I'd put that out there, not to say, gee, we're good, because I'm not sure that's the case, but to get you to reflect on your own role in the industry and your own track record and your own network. What is it that you could achieve if you turned your mind to it? If you really wanted to take up the challenge of $100 billion worth of farm gate value, what is it that you could achieve? Because great things are possible in short times. And I'll bring it to a close there. Thank you.